you show this kind of interest. Okay, I'm not trying. That's somebody else. I hope that's okay with the camera head. I, you know, here's what I hope we can work on today. Um, well, that's what I'll talk about today, at least, is this issue, and I never got it quite right before. But if you take the cash flow and divide it by the debt DSCR to get the amount of debt service you need, uh, that cash flow divided by the DSCR can give you an amount of debt service that's less than the interest. And if it's less than the interest, when you just put your debt schedule in, you get a negative repayment. And the banks, for many reasons, wouldn't like that because that means their debt commitment would be increasing over time. And so a few people have asked me about this, I think, and I was afraid to deal with it because it can be really it can be a little bit painful to get it quite right. Last week we very quickly we said, oh, just put a cash reserve up there uh, 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 and then just take money out of the cash reserve to pay the debt you would have otherwise paid to make that repayment so you can keep the debt to the same. We don't increase the debt. When I did that, that's so incorrect. And this is one of the really painful that to really do this right. I think it's very painful. And it will involve issues of circular references that we began talking about last week. And it will involve issues of debt structuring and some theoretical issues as well. So I hope this is okay with everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing the screen right away and show you what I worked on a little while this week because I was so nervous about getting this problem correct. Again, if you notice what I did is I avoided the problem. All right, I'm going to now here's what I'm doing. I made some mistakes during the class. I hope it still kind of went okay, but I made some mistakes. So now I'm kind of interrupting what I said in the class and fixing things. All right. So, first of all, if you want to find any of the associated files, the place I put them is up here, the very top of Project Finance. I went into Files and Videos for the weekend sessions. And so I'm putting these session by session up here. Oh, God. And right now we're going to be on section 6, and I put the Excel file with the completed case, and I've also put, I'm going to update these PowerPoint slides and put them up. So first thing is, as usual, and I'm sorry about this, I think it's kind of important to go through some theory first. So I'd like to talk about my friend Merton Miller. Here he is in this video. It's a screenshot from a video called the $1 Trillion Bet. It's an old video from the 1990s, but it's wonderful, actually. It's got some bullshit in it too, but whatever. Here's what he said, of course. Not of course. He said, that doesn't matter. Oof. In Project Finance, debt is everything. I'm not going to redo that a lot, but I'm going to talk about general kind of principles of corporate finance, excuse me for saying, the idea of corporate finance and the idea of Modigliani and Miller, or Miller really more, and the idea that kind of it's the value of the asset that matters, not all the contracts and everything else. You can value all the contracts, including the debt contract, kind of separately. You have an inherent value of the asset. That's the way I look at his brilliance. I met him, so I'm all proud of that. And then, in that case, it's really the overall return on the project. Don't look at equity IRR. Don't look at leverage when you compute the weighted average cost of capital. Start with the ungeared or unlevered beta and go from there. Now, in project finance, we totally turn that on our head. And I suspect that if I had a meeting with Mr. Miller, I got to long meetings with Bob Hamada. I remember when he was smoking, I could hardly breathe in there. And he did a lot of this re-leveraging and unleveraging the beta. If we said, look, project finance, the whole debt size is specifically geared to the risk of the project. If you have a risky project, you get less debt, shorter debt, higher interest rate debt. The debt really drives everything. And if you don't get debt, you don't get a project. This whole thing implies, number one, anybody who does gearing and ungearing of betas, I think I've got to cover that separately, is just such a ridiculous idea. But this also suggests that the equity IRR is the right metric to use. It's better than the project IRR because let's try, if I could do it really simply, if you have a high project IRR, that means it's risky, but then you get less debt, so the equity IRR kind of levels out. If you've got a less risky project, you get more debt. The project IRR is lower, not higher, because you've got a lower risk project, but the debt is more, and the equity IRR kind of all balances out. Not perfectly, obviously, but that's why, and that's why it's legitimate to think about equity IRR, not project IRR. Now, so we're going to look at equity IRR in our exercise. And I also want to say that dividends, this is our classic and the only graph that matters. Use a tail. Don't be like these people who don't show a tail. Show the debt service. Show this as the present value of the debt. Show how much extra space you have for potential restructuring. Show how much debt coverage you have. But all of this coverage comes from dividends. So we need, and this is going to be a theme and a problem in the model, when we deal with this problem of how to structure the debt size with some mathematics, we need to allow for dividends because we need to allow this buffer. And when you have this negative repayment or this problem where the debt service is greater than the interest rather is greater than the debt service, and we try to fill up the balance without providing a buffer, the banks they shouldn't really like that because they love this dividend buffer. Okay. Now we could instead of using a cash reserve, and I've just made a little example of this, and I have to say something. Have to say anything. What a lot of BS is that? This is where we have, where's the interest? The interest is up here, and somewhere I showed the debt service. I don't show the debt service because this is just a screenshot, but the DSC required debt service is less than the interest, so we have these negative repayments. One way to solve this would be either a payment in kind, or the bank just saying, okay, we'll make our loan bigger. You notice that the loan is getting bigger. We could allow this loan to get bigger by just adding another thing here and saying, okay, let's let's allow payment in kind interest, and that means this negative repayment will be offset by a increase in the debt, and the balance of the debt will stay flat, okay? And whatever, that's just like negative sculpting. That's just a way to do the negative sculpting. Now, I just want to say, if you did this, this is kind of the final model we're going to use, and I put way too many little buttons in here. And when I put way too many buttons in here, I have an option to use the iteration, turn the iteration button on and off, use the debt sculpting, do our goal seeks with circular references, and either use the reserve account. If we don't use the reserve account, we're using a negative sculpting. And at the end of the day, here is in just one scenario, I don't know why I put 9% in here. When we have a 9% equity return, if that's with a reserve account. If it's not with a reserve account, we have a higher number. That's a little bit of the theory, I hope. Otherwise, if you want to do it a little bit differently, what we've been doing in the last session or two, we've been saying, how much should we pay for the asset? How much is the equity? No, this is yes, this is the equity consideration. How much equity should we pay in order to get a 9% return? Now, to do that, we need to make a goal seek. We just put in a higher price, change the taxes around a little bit, not so much, but for the fees, we have some circular references occurring. And so if we use a reserve account and have to put with a reserve account, you have to put this cash on the balance sheet, and you have to have more equity value. And if you're setting your amount of consideration for the equity of the company using a target equity return, oh my God, I'm going to have to get a water. Then if we use a reserve account, we're willing to pay $39 million. If we don't use a reserve account, we're willing to pay less. And I think what I better do just for a tiny moment. Now, if you try to solve this problem and just say, okay, let's take that negative repayment we derived, and I strongly believe, I've been struggling trying to think about this, whether you can do this with one debt schedule, or do you have to first put the negative repayment in and then do a second one? I believe you have to do the latter, but maybe somebody can find a more elegant solution to this. So we go through our normal kind of DSCR equals blah, 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 debt service is equal to CFA divided by interest, debt service is interest plus repayment, and the repayment can be negative. And then you could do either set up a cash reserve like we're going to do, but when we set up a cash reserve, I think you still want the DSCR to be equal to this target DSCR. And if you work through this, you say, okay, let's figure out what the CFADS is minus tax, but we put this reserve amount withdrawn from the reserve account as a part of our cash flow available for debt service. That's kind of the point. And then we have, well, our target. Now let's figure out what our target CFADS has to be, including this amount. We set our debt service this time is only the interest. We take away, we're not having any, we're going to get rid of the negative repayment and make sure our debt balance doesn't go up. So we just rearrange this formula for the CFADS a little bit. And this amount withdrawn is equal to the interest times the DSCR. This time we have a little bit of buffer and we can allow some dividends to occur. And then rearranging this formula, okay, this amount, put this over here and all that stuff. The amount withdraws is the interest times the DSCR minus the EBITDA that we're already getting, plus the taxes that we have to take out of our pocket, perhaps. And that you can solve that then with a formula. The problem with this formula is that this thing goes into the CFADS, but the CFADS is up here, and the DSCR is up here, and you have another circular reference. Okay, and so let's talk about this ugly problem of circular references, and this is part of the reason I had to revise this 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 discussion of the problem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open the completed one. I've been working on this completed one for a little while. Now, the first thing I did, I put way too much crap up here. Okay, let me just explain a little bit how this stuff can work. Let's go to this financial model. Let's say I go up here and press Shift F2. I put why didn't that work? Just a minute. Did I not press it? Probably. I just didn't press it hard enough. Okay, I'm losing my strength, I guess. All right, and CapEx include EPC plus other stuff. Okay. Now, it might be really nice to have some comments like this in here. We can put a whole bunch of stuff, but I would like to have a little thing where I can either show the comments or not. So let me make sure that I didn't already have some comment thing here. So we're going to make a range name. I'm going to make a range name up here, and I'm going to call it comment. I could call it comments, anything else. And then I'm just going to make this range name true or false. Now, what I'm going to do with this little thing is I have to make a little, change the color of it. If excuse me, if this is true, let's show the comment. If it's false, let's not show the comment. Now, the trick for me to doing this is to go to the insert, find a little, one of these little check boxes. When I do this, I might have to go to Format Control and make it as a yellow kind of thing. Okay. And then you can try to do this, which is enormously painful. I'm deleting everything and putting show comment. I hope I spelled it correctly. I think I might not have. Yeah, I did. And then the first thing we do is we take this little box, we go to the control, and we say, let's go to another sheet, blah, 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 back to the same sheet, and click on that. So that this will just switch it on and off. Now remember, this has a range name. And what you do is, let's first turn it off. And then if it's true, let's turn it on. So you just hit assign macro this time, just make it a new one. Okay, and let's put, put application dot display comment and indicator, and let's make it no indicator. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to say false. And then if comment, and I don't think I have to put dot value. I hope I spelled it right. That says if it's true, then application dot display comment and indicator equals comment and indicator. How's that? And that's all we have to do. And then when we do something like this, we say, then I'm showing it. And then we can show all our comments. And that just illustrates, so when it's false, it doesn't show it. When it's true, it does. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is, again, just to review, we made a transaction page. And in the transaction page, we're financing this. We're going to buy the enterprise value of this company, including the existing debt. And basically, that means we're going to implicitly get rid of the old debt and we're going to get some new debt, and we might have to put a cash reserve account onto here. And when we put a cash reserve onto here in the sources and uses of funds, if this debt is determined by sculpting and the cash flow, meaning this debt has nothing to do with all this stuff up here or anything down here, this debt is independent of the sources and uses of fund statement itself, no debt to capital constraint, blah, blah, blah. If we have a bigger cash reserve account, we have more equity. And the one rule, I think I even may have said it somewhere. I hope I said it here. And I don't know if I really did. Oh, shit. I didn't mean to say that. The one rule, we kept on talking about it at the very beginning, and I think it's important, and I do this in my classes all the time, to really understand the IRR. And maybe there's some problems with the IRR. We talked about problems. But any time you have to put more cash out of your pocket at the beginning, that could be 10 years of cash flow at the end, or even more. Okay? That's because of discounting at the IRR itself and all this blah, 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 blah. You can argue that's wrong with the IRR, but that's a fact. And if people are using the IRR and don't say like the AIF that this IRR is bullshit, Ms. Barbara, whatever her name is, I'm quoting some Oxford professor who says IRR is bullshit. Maybe it is, but everybody uses it. And they use the equity IRR, and they use the equity IRR for a reason. You should know that. Okay, so now, the reason I'm showing you that, okay, and the reason we went through this in the class is that then we talked about circular references, and we talked about this business of going to file and then options and then in formulas pushing this enable iteration button. And my friend Brian, who's really smart, he said, well, you know, when you have this iteration button on, there are some dangers of this. And what this thing does is it just does very similar to what we did with the comments. And I didn't mean to just, I meant to, when I right click, go to assign macro and then get edit. Of course, this, I'm going to have to revise this, I'm going to have to revise the workbook I put on that website that I showed you. And this says, well, do a similar thing with application and make make a range name called iteration button, and then get this. And why did I have to? Why could I not have just put iteration button equals application iteration? I think I could have done that, and I kind of did it silly. So I'm not going to try it right now, but I think you could have just taken this application button here and put it here. But I wanted to show you what I wanted to turn this button on and off. This thing that says turn it on and off. That's a range name that we can turn it on and off. And then I'm just showing you whether it's on and off. That's kind of silly, isn't it? Well, whatever. So here's what we talked about. Now, if I leave the iteration button off and then use, when I say use iteration, perhaps that should have been really use. No, I'm going to say here, I'm going to change this to, and I hope I can do it like this. Come on, please. I'm going to put no copy and paste. Okay? It kind of worked. Let me do that again. I'm sorry. No copy and paste. P-A-S-T-E. Did I press the S? Okay. So if we have the iteration button not on, and we have no copy and paste, then let me just switch it on and off. Is it going on and off? Just 1 second. This is the kind of shit I've been struggling with.
Okay, well, it would really, really help if I could read my own stupid little buttons. So the iteration button is off. If we click on this one, so it's true that there's no copy and paste. It's kind of like a double negative. Maybe that was an idiotic way to do it. Okay, that means we have all these circular reference problems and kind of nothing works. Okay, so I'm going to leave no copy and paste, and then I'm going to put the iteration button on. Now, I have to revise something I said perhaps a little bit, and I'm not absolutely sure of this. If the copy and I'm sorry, if the goal seek you're going to do is related to these blue buttons, so I'm going to turn the iteration button off and put no copy and paste again, get our circular reference. In this case, we had a whole lot of circular references, some going to another sheet, which is bad practice, some with the CFADS, all of this stuff. If we have we're going to try to do it with no copy and paste, and I'm going to try to make this goal seek work. Now, one of the things I did, so it seems that everything works. That's great. But then what I said is the disaster for this. And now let's kind of go up here, and some of the circular references, and I'm not reviewing these circular references at this time, but some of the circular references were related to the tax and the operating loss and all of that stuff. And if we, let's just take something here. I'm not sure where to do it, and I'm a little bit afraid, but I'm going to type the letter A here, okay? And then I get all these values, okay? And I might have to turn it off, because if I press undo, how can I this one, it's right up here. Let's press undo, and it still gives me these things. And then I've got some real problems. And very, very often, when you do this, well, that was lucky. Okay, so I can take this one and I can erase the whole line. And luckily, I can do this. Now, what Brian had suggested is that whenever we go anything that has a circular reference, but I didn't do it with all of them. I did it with the tax, I think. So we made a little circular key, and this thing says if this is true, that means we switch on the model, basically. I don't know why people call this the circular key. Then everything works, and I have to admit, I haven't really tried this before because I think it's kind of silly. Then the good news is I can just press Control Z, and so when I finally want to do my calculations, I leave it on. But when we turn this off, and I suppose we'd have to do this with any time we get some blue lines, and I have to admit I didn't do this. I don't really have to admit. That was kind of a silly thing to do. So remember, we're going to leave no copy and paste, so we're just going to use our formulas directly. What? Why didn't this work? Just a minute. Oh, this circular reference shit. I'm going to leave this off. I should be seeing the dreaded blue lines. I suppose sometimes when I have to do this, I don't know why. Sometimes Excel goes kind of crazy with all these circular references, but I sometimes might have to switch this on, and then after I do that again, I switch it off, and if this doesn't work, I'm not even gonna whatever. And I don't know why that didn't work. It didn't work. I believe I'm not using copy and paste, and well, I'm gonna just switch the iteration button on again. I don't know why I hate that. it happens sometimes, and it's not the first time it happened where I don't show it. Okay, now what we did is we got all our revenues and expenses from a detailed model. We put the option of assuming debt into this model or not assuming debt. Let me try it again. If I don't have copy and paste, it's still not showing up. Okay. And then I hope I didn't do anything really stupid, but I could have. And then we go down here and we say, let's find our equity cash flow that we're earning after we pay some transaction fees, and the transaction fees depend on the debt itself, and I assume the transaction fees were deductible for taxes, which might or might not occur. And then we're going to put some consideration here, and that consideration comes from this sheet here, and this consideration up here is called consideration, and we're going to make a goal seek. Okay, and when we make a goal seek, always, we're going to, I'm going to make a macro around the goal seek, and I'm going to say, well, let's make the NPV of the equity cash flow equal to 0 by changing the consideration. And the NPV, we use X NPV, I guess, and I put a target IRR in. So this NPV should be equal to 0. And let's see what happens. And, okay. I didn't click on this reserve account, so there was no circular reference, actually. I believe I can't even work through this right now. So we're not using the copy and paste. We're leaving the iteration button on, and we're using a reserve account. And when you do this, there are a couple of circular references. One certain circular reference is that if we have higher consideration, we pay fees and we pay taxes on the fees. The fees itself can cause a circular reference, and excuse me, and the amount of cash flow can cause a circular reference. I'm not even sure where all the blue lines come from. So now I'm going to just do that simple goal seek, and I've got no copy and paste, and I've got the iteration button on. And whenever, even if it's a really simple problem, and this is where I hope Brian doesn't get all pissed at me, but even if it's a simple problem, anytime the goal seek is part of the circular reference kind of equations in the iteration button, you're going to have something like this occur. So you click on this one, and you notice it's just going around and around and around. And so that's those two things I just showed you. And I didn't show this appropriately at first. Oh, look, it even stopped for some reason and gave a consideration of negative whatever it was. Okay, so what we need to do is, I just have to keep doing this. What we need to do is turn the iteration button off, allow for copy and paste. I have my silly double negative here, and then we have a circular difference. Now, when we do this, what I tried to show last time, again, and this is kind of a review and where I kind of screwed up a little bit in class. And why is this? Just a minute. I gotta fix my balance sheet here. Okay, I'm going to clearly have to put a new shift control. Oops, my God. Okay, the balance sheet doesn't balance, and what we have is we have a copy block, and I had to put the fees on the transaction as part of the copy block. And whenever I have a circular reference, and when you're going piece by piece down the model, and you have some circular references, we had two things here. We have the debt that occurs from the present value of the debt service, And there's a circular reference problem here because of the taxes, which I'll go through in a minute. And we just put a copy and paste block, and then you start to get used to this and say, that's all I have to do. So now we're going to do the same problem. We're going to do exactly the same problem using a reserve account, which creates a circular reference. And there are these other ones that are created too, I believe. And now if I just do the goal seek, well, the goal seek works, but I have a circular reference problem. So what we need to do is we need to go down here, and I'm going to look at our macro. And in our macro, this time, and that's what Brian had kind of done, is we have a macro that says, okay, go around and around until two things happens. The difference in the copy block and the paste block is less than a really small amount, the absolute value of it. And the difference in the goal seek, and this goal seek that is from the acquirer is up here, this difference in the goal seek is also equal to 0. And each time we go around and around with this copy and paste, I did this last time, we go around to make the copy and paste, we take the paste block, the fixed block equals the copy block, and they're both ranged names. Okay, I hope that we did this in the last session. So now I'm going to press this button that does both of these things together, and then we get an answer. So that's just really a review of and look at that. It takes a while to do. And that's really interesting. And that's my passion in my life, is sometimes these copy and paste. And this, remember, is a pretty simple model. And it took a tiny little bit of time. It didn't take a long time. So then now we're willing to pay 44 million or whatever for the company if we want a 7% return, if we want an 8% return, and this is really valuation, then we're going to pay a less. And that is, the whole thing is based on the, right, come on, and I don't mind leaving it here. And this UDF thing that I've been working on for so long, and I'm totally convinced it works, will speed this stuff up immensely. But we've got a small model, so it's really not a big problem yet. Okay. And now, if I don't use, so we're paying this, if I didn't use the reserve account, and if I didn't use the reserve account, what that means is that now we get a difference. And if I didn't use the reserve account, and I'm skipping around a little bit, and I'm really sorry about that, that essentially says that we're going to allow the debt service from this to occur. And if I allow that debt service to be negative like this, which means the debt balance keeps going up, and I hope down here in the debt balance, you see it's going up. And again, if when I have a regular old class like I had before, and I asked people to press F11, I was so happy they were pressing F11, and the debt goes up, and then we press Alt-EL and get rid of it. Okay, so if you do that, and then I think I think perhaps without this reserve, we might not even have to do all of this copy and paste, but I'm going to do this anyway. So actually, that didn't. It had less of an effect than I wanted it to. But no, okay. So, and I was just trying to what was it before? Let's put the reserve account in again. So we have 43 without it, and then when we put this reserve account in, which means we have to stick cash on our balance sheet. Just a minute. I think I'm getting a little afraid of things. If we use the reserve account, we pay 41. We're willing to pay 41 million to get our IR. If the bank is going to say no, it makes more sense for you to allow the debt to go up, then we're willing to pay 43 million. So it makes a difference. I wanted it, frankly, to be a little more dramatic, but out of all the things I'm worried about right now, that's the last. I hope I've proven that we need something other than the iteration button. In another time and place and video or webinar, I'm going to make a whole thing showing you the dramatic speed and the dramatic effects of using the UDF where no buttons have to be pressed, the iteration button can be off, and everything works, okay? But that's my passion in my life, and you don't give a shit about that maybe right now. Okay, so that's a little bit about this ugly problem of circularity, and we can kind of solve it a little bit with our copy block and our paste block. Okay, and now just so you understand, when does this negative debt problem arise? I think I've heard a lot of people basically say it arises when if you have a solar project and you have high solar in like 1 6-month period, whatever, in Paris the summertime, in the wintertime low solar. Well, when it's low solar in that 6 month period of debt service, when it's low solar, that means that CFADS is going to be lower. You divide it by the DSCR, you get an even lower number, and you compare that the interest on big debt that you can afford because you have the good solar during the summer. I hope I didn't mix up the summer and the winter just now. That's one problem, the seasonal cash flow. If you have a really high growth rate and there's a high inflation rate, well, this debt service goes up with this one, but because the interest rate is also often high, this can very often appear in this problem, and that's exactly what I did to illustrate this problem. So I've got it kind of backwards. If you've got some battery augmentation, and maybe I'm focusing a little too much on renewables, but whatever, seems to be where some of this stuff occurs. If every 3 years or 5 years or even 2 years, whatever, we have to make a big expenditure, that's a reduction in our CFADS. We have to make a big expenditure for augmenting our batteries. We get some CFADS that goes way down, and it's probably going to be lower than the interest, and a creative bank would say, use payment in kind, or let us allow a negative repayment in those circumstances, but they probably won't. And that means you have to set up a cash reserve. I think if you get really creative, you've got to push the bank. Inverter replacements, overhauls, they all can cause this problem. An MRA, a maintenance reserve account, can kind of fix this also. And it's almost kind of a variant, if you really think about this, of an MRA account, some of these things, okay? So my issue here, and this is what we got a little bit wrong, okay? And let's see if we can just explain this. Let's say we just zero out the negative repayment. And let's also say, can you do this without a two-step? I think you need step one to compute the you can call this the difference between the interest expense and the debt service. When that is negative, I call it negative repayment. You call it whatever you'd like. You probably have a nice fancier name for it. When you do that, if you would just zero this out, let's say we just zeroed this out, and I got to pause for just 1 second. if you just zeroed this out, the cash flow and the interest expense would be exactly the same thing. There would be no whatever. There would be no buffer. The DSCR would be 1.0, not your target, and there would be no buffer in cash flow. So that was the temptation at first. Just take this number, call this CFADS, put the CFADS, and then the CFAD, put this down in the CFADS formula. If this CFADS increases by this amount, then we'll have 0 here, and when we do our cash flow divided by DSCR, the cash flow and the interest expense will be exactly the same, and we'll have a DSCR of 1. And that's not what you want. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is if you zero these things out and then the debt doesn't go up but stays the same, well, if we didn't have this negative repayment, we would either repay the debt early, which I didn't want to do that. Excuse me. You'd either repay the debt early, or you would get some stupid words out. It's hard for me to get words out. Or you'd have kind of a negative debt, okay? Because these things, if this was 0 again, the debt will be smaller, and then all these positive amounts later on will be used to repay the debt. So we've got 2 problems, and these 2 problems are what makes this whole analysis a lot more tricky. And I said, okay, well, why don't, when we do this, and Eddie will do some work on this in a minute, let's try it without, in a simple way, and just put a reserve account equal to these negative amounts. But then let's do it the right way. And the right way, we'll say, to use a nice little formula instead of forcing things with goal 6, which in a way, because of the circular reference, we have to do that anyway. Now, I've got this completed version right now, okay? So we'll try a simpler approach, and then we'll try to resolve the debt tenor, and then we'll make sure that our DSCR is always got a positive amount through the whole thing. And I talked to Hetty after this, who's going to do the exercise. And she said, oh, shit, I would, and she would never swear. She said, I couldn't, this would be really hard to do myself, okay? So I'm going to try with the completed version. And this, I've got to get the new version with all these little buttons and all that up here. Okay, so let's just work through this a little bit and show you some of the really painful things to do. Okay, so the first thing is that, if we go through this thing, what we did is we just picked off, we used a lookup function, and we have a transaction period that occurs for 1 day, and then we have a annual. We did this on an annual basis. Fine, whatever. Okay, and I don't know why exactly. Oh, I remember, because in the input input C, we said, we're going to allow up here this construction period to be 12 months, or rather the months in each carat. I didn't know that's a name, actually, there are 12 months in each carat. And then we have an input S and all that wonderful blah, blah, blah stuff, and it's really important. So we used an annual mall, got the revenues, the existing depreciation, which gets into some tax issues. If you buy the assets for tax purposes, you can increase the assets, but then the seller has to pay a gain. That's not a great idea. And then we had the depreciation rate, and if we have some existing debt, we get that over here. If we assume the debt here, we just put in all the existing debt. I guess I had a negative repayment in that one too, so I don't even want to deal with that. That could have been dealt with in the project finance model. So instead, we're going to pay off the old debt and issue some new debt. And we hope to get more debt here. And the first step for me is to say, okay, well, let's take the CF, and this is the hard part. This repayment flag, well, that's not very hard. That's our old repayment flag. This CFADS without the reserve account. So down here, and that creates a little bit of a circular reference for the taxes, I think. I got to be really careful. But I'm going to go down to line 123. And then down in line 123, that's where I just said, let's do a whole, and by the way, this little true and false says that that's related to using the no copy and paste little flag. Okay, this is just the cash flow available for debt service after taxes. Okay, with or without the iteration button. And when you do that, excuse me, when you put all of that stuff in, then you get this. And this is really embarrassing. I gotta take a bath. So this is the CFADS without the reserve account, because if we put the reserve account in, we wouldn't get the negative amounts, and we need the negative amounts to figure out what this period is where we have to take money out of a reserve account to fund all of this stuff. Okay, so we need two kind of CFADS is one without the reserve account, and then we need one with the reserve account. Okay, so part one is, and I'm sorry about this, I need to stop for just a minute and say, I've been losing sleep over this silly thing. Can we do all of this analysis without first having this little negative repayment flag? I need interest to get the negative repayment. To get the, or whatever, the amount above the interest, I need it, the interest itself. So that's the interest. The target debt service is right here. This target debt service is like lower than the interest. And I suppose maybe you don't need this whole separate section of the model, but I can't right now see how to do it without this. And then once we get this negative repayment flag, say, okay, let's just use a maximum. And Brian did the fancy thing where he put the negatives in and all that. I mean, the spaces in. Good. Okay. And then, and I guess that's the official style. I don't understand why you can't put a minus there, but all right. Then we just put a little true. If this is greater than a really small number, that's the period when we need a reserve account. And then we get our withdrawals. And to get the withdrawals, we know in this period there's going to be no repayment. And if there's no repayment, then we multiply the then we know the debt service, which has to give us a dividend. That debt service times the DSCR, we need that extra 1.2 or 1.4, whatever the DSCR is. We need that to produce a dividend that we're going to be able to take out anyway. Okay, so we have to kind of put cash up there to get a buffer to get the cash back out. If we don't do that, and as we go through this exercise in the next section with Hedy, we'll see exactly that happens. You take it, that's the amount we need. We take about away the EBITDA. We don't have any taxes yet because we had this NOL. But if we had taxes, we'd have to get some money to get the reserve for the taxes as well. And then this is the net withdrawal we have to take out of the account. And then we just add that all together. And I don't see how to do this without first setting up this. We need a separate debt service, minimum debt service account up here so we can get this number, and then we need that number to get both this negative amount, which I suppose you don't really need that much, but you do need this flag, okay? And then once we have the flag, this is, oh no, this is just a general flag, excuse me. We take this amount we have just up there, and I put a little flag for using the reserve account. That's this little flag, so we can do it with or without. If we do this without, it just goes back to our negative cash flow. And then we then we put the closing balance of this reserve in here, and we start with this amount. And as long as we don't have any interest income, that happens. Now, if you have interest income, okay, you have to then put the interest income into the CFADS. It's not that difficult, but it'll create another circular reference. I'm quite sure of that. Okay, and then if we would right now, we started with this amount of debt up here. Okay, I suppose if I would put here, I'm just going to cheat. If I would put 1, so we just take exactly the amount of debt out. Now, do you see what we're doing? Just a minute, I might have to run the circular reference. Okay. Let me go back. I'm not gonna do this little exercise where we just put this amount in the account rather than this one. We're going to do that in the next exercise. Okay, so we have this number now. Once we do this, the amount of our CFADS, is that the one I did? I meant to make it up here. Excuse me. Let me just. Now, just to illustrate something, okay, I pretended just for a minute, and I'm a little worried that I'm going to mess a whole bunch of things up. We have the negative repayments here converted to a positive repayment here. And let's just pretend that the withdrawal we make and we put that into our CFADS, that comes from directly the negative amounts. And let's also assume that those negative amounts, that's the total amount of the reserve account that we'll have. Now, in chart 1, I present the cash flow and the debt service. And can you see that this DSCR is not adequate for the bank? It doesn't work. That is our first problem. So we have to use this other formula, where, where I take the interest expense, multiply it by not divide it, multiply it by the 1.2, and then we get the amount. Now, just a minute, let me go back. Shoot, I'm going to pause again. When I use this formula, when I say, okay, take the interest times the DSCR, take away the EBITDA you had already, and what's left over, you better have that much money to make the interest times the DSCR be sufficient for the bank to get that 1.2. And can you see, I just switched the sheet around, and then it works. And that's painful. So we need this separate formula, and this separate formula, I went through and I told you the separate formula, and that's that little formula that we worked through, and I put up here this formula, interest times DSCR minus EBITDA plus taxes. And we just went through some algebra, and that shows a big theme for a lot of things. Go through some formulas and don't try to force it with too many goal seeks, although we did use a little bit of a goal seek. Now let's show you the other problem. Okay, so that we resolved the DSCR. I think I have to press this circular button again. Okay, I hope. We're using the reserve account. not having the iteration on, and we are using a copy and paste. Oh, God. Okay, now let's go down, and when we do this, so right now, notice that the debt is staying constant, and then eventually it's going down. And there are two things we have to do here. This time, we need to, the interest expense on here is going to be different than the interest expense up here, right here. Okay, in this period, 2980, and oh, so sorry, it does get to be the same here. Excuse me, I was wrong about that. But at any rate, here's what I suggest you do for the repayment. For the repayment, we take, if this 57, which I'm not showing right here, if 57, which is our negative repayment flag, is true, then let's, I'm sorry, then we're going to have zero repayment. Otherwise, we're just going to take the CFADS. This is the D debt service. I got to change that from CFADS after the reserve account. And I think there's a little effect on the taxes. I still think you have to make a separate one. And then if we go down now, again, the circular reference is making my whole head spin, and they should make your head spin. That's what they're almost supposed to do. We compute our taxes, and we have our net operating loss for our taxes. And then we compute our CFADS, and our CFADS this time includes the withdrawal. And I put a little thing in because the taxes could be from a whatever, the reserve accounts or not. And then we have a circular reference for this withdrawal, because this withdrawal depends on the it depends on the CFADS, and it depends on the first one and the second one. I can't even put my head around this circular reference for now. And then we take the debt service, which is from this debt service is from our debt service that we use, include it with the when it's just got interest, or here it's just this is the debt service from right here, and then I added, just in case we left some existing debt on the balance sheet, we could have added that. So, what a pain! And I'm sorry, I'm not. My head is in a big circular reference right now. It's spinning all around, but this whole thing is to emphasize that this CFADS we compute with the reserve account. Of course, the first one you cannot do it with the reserve account, because you need the kind of negative repayment in order to get that. That's why I do a different CFADS down here, okay? And we're on a different goal sig for some reason. That doesn't matter at all, of course, I hope. Okay, so that's that. Now, once we have that, then we're not quite finished. Now, I'm going to, right here, I'm going to, just for a minute, when we sized the debt before and we allowed the negative repayment to occur, this negative repayment allowed the debt up here to be smaller, and then it grew and grew and grew until it comes to this number, which is kind of, I think, the same number we had over here for our new debt issue. But this time I put in new debt. If I would have started, I'm going to put this final debt size here to be this one, which is our original debt size. I kind of cheated here. I've got a circular reference. Let me go ahead and resolve our circular reference with our little button, which I totally agree is a pain. That's why we use the UDF. Okay, and now when we do this, and the final repayment applied is this one, and I don't use a minimum here. And if I don't use a minimum here, what happens is this debt outstanding was longer. No, I'm sorry. This debt outstanding up here was longer. I don't know what we had with the other formula for just a minute. But so what we're doing is we're shortening the debt. I could have put and maybe I should have put a minimum of this or the opening balance here. But instead of doing that, I'm going to hopefully undo, please, oh no, this debt size from debt service came from here, but this created I think this was here, and I can't remember if I took this all the way from down here, and we had a paste block, which is this one. So we could take it, I think, from this one, and that's why I'm going to have to run one more circular reference, and it gets a little crazy, but I'm going to put that. Oh, please, please. Come on, come on, come on, come on. No. Okay. Okay, I can't even remember what I just did. If I took it from the copy block instead of the paste block, I might well have done that. And then you're doing a goal seek, and you're finding the debt at the very end of the period. And to find the debt at the very end of the period, you go to this closing balance and you just put a sum product, and you want to do a little goal seek. That's kind of the old-fashioned forcing way to do all this business. And you've got a flag for the final period, and you make this the sum product, and you stick this I'm sorry, and then you instead of doing this, just a minute, we take this time, I'm sorry, I take that back. We take the sum product of all of the debt service, but that debt service depends on the amount of debt, obviously, and this debt then comes from the copy and paste routine. And that's starting to be more complicated, and I've worked through that. So, how horrible this whole problem is, but it's important, and I do not see if somebody has a wonderful, nice, trickier way to do this so that two things happen, so that we get our DSCR to be correct, and the bank is all happy about our DSCR, and we also get our debt to go down to zero. Now it's because I put a 0.01 or something in for the goal seek that didn't go down to exactly zero. And then in this example, I also went down and put some financial statements in. I put some depreciation in, and if we have a little write-up on the asset because our consideration and our implied enterprise value is higher than the amount that was originally paid, we can take the same depreciation rate, compute that, we get the EBITDA. Remember, for the taxes, I used the old depreciation, not the redone depreciation, and you could even compute some deferred taxes on this if you wanted to, but I didn't. So we have some EBITDA, we have some taxes paid, and they're all negative until we get some positive. We have negative earnings, which is not surprising. We go down to operating cash flow. I suggest you put EBITDA minus taxes, kind of almost like a CFADS in operating tax. And then for the investing tax flow, you put how much you paid, including the fee, and including that reserve account. And then for the financing, you put in all the amount of new debt you raised, new equity you raised, and then you're going to repay the debt and get some dividends. And the dividends come from we better have a little bit of a cash flow waterfall up here. Okay, less consideration. I hope this is the dividends. I didn't call them dividends. I'm sorry for that. Don't yell at me for that. Okay, and then we stick in our balance sheet, and this difference, this K72, that's that closing balance of the reserve account. We put our depreciation in, including the write-up. We got our total assets, and that should be kind of like this transaction. We had to do something a little bit differently with the fees, and we got how much we had to finance. And was that no that was because of the fees get added instead of deducted from the income. It's a little bit different, but it's okay. We get a balance sheet balancing, and the balance sheet balances all the way. So that's how to kind of model an integrated transaction. And I guess the equity account goes negative. Well, you better use a shareholder loan or something for that. Okay. And I think, okay, now we're going to go back, and now I'm going to go back to the class and how we did this step by step by step. Hopefully, this is enough. And hopefully you can open that exercise file and work through this. And I think if you've got this problem, it's probably worth working through. Okay.
I have tried to do here is, oh, this will be, and if somebody else, let's, I think we'll find out right away um, if this is working, and if somebody else is ready to step in, please, it's not
Yes.
that, you don't have to go to a psychologist or anything, it's not that bad, I promise. Okay, so can you, are you sharing the screen, Eddie?
Yes, let me share again. I thought you wanted somebody else to step
No, no,
in.
no,
No,
no, no,
nobody else.
I'm just,
So do you
okay.
want this focus thing to be on, Ed?
It's up to you.
I saw.
You decide everything, okay?
Okay, sure.
Just a minute, I'm just getting my view focused. Where is it? Okay, sorry. Okay, good. Can everybody see this okay, or do we have to make it a little larger? I don't know. So let's go up to the top. So what this one, let's try, let's go up to, let's go up to the debt schedule. Okay, and I hope, keep going up. I hope I left some yellow things up there. Did I not?
That's the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you mind what is this one?
Sorry, I took the exercise for session 6, dated 13/9/2025. That's the one, or
And
we have
then
another one, solution for session 6. So
No, the exercise, this is incredible that I'm losing it. Go down a little bit after the new debt, and if we have to, oh, they're good. Oh, phew. I was just making sure we had those yellow things. So what
yes.
I want to do is focus on these yellow things. So the first thing is, let's do this kind of the way we thought we could maybe do this last time. So in this example, we let me see, and you have the iteration turned on. And in this example, what we did is, remember, we perhaps I should have done it with that negative repayment in line 56. So if you look at line 56 up there, that's just a negative amount, and then that switches to positive later on. And we said, okay, well, let's do this a little bit not correctly. Let's not reflect that you have to have this extra DSCR buffer. Let's just make the withdrawals from let's just make them equal to the negative amount. So that's up in line 56. So would you mind just going up to line 56 and taking that one? I'm sorry, I meant that one, right? Just no, don't this time, Eddie. We're gonna just pretend we're gonna just say, okay, let's just take only that number, copy, and then okay, and we can leave a lot of this out. And could you go down to where it says the reserve account? So I'm not gonna I'm gonna try to do things simply up here. And maybe that's what I really wanted to do. And this reserve account, would you mind renaming the reserve account the opening balance there, or whatever you call it? If you're really fancy, call it brought forward or something. Good, good. Starting balance. Good. Okay. Put an equal sign, just make that equal the ending balance. I spelled reserve there wrong. Okay, good. And then we go down and we put our, remember our initial deposit. If you go to the sum in line 59, if you go to line 59, sorry about that. Would you mind escape? Would you mind, that's okay. Would you mind going to column row E, or the same row but column E? And I said, well, let's just, so escape, escape, and just
Sorry.
put that, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go down to line 69 and just put an equal sign and just go up and get that total amount. So we need to cover that total amount over there. Now, I'm not putting an interest income here. If we would put an interest income, we'd have another circular reference and there'd be a few other things going on. It, by the time you get finished with that, that would not be a big deal. So what I suggested is, remember, we have a transaction period in this whole thing. And if you go if you go to that one, right, it's still recording, I hope. Put an equal sign, just take that number and lock it and multiply it by that transaction period in row 5. Perfect. Okay, and then let's withdraw from this account the amount that's in line 59. And we basically did this before. So go up to line 59, and then let's put that, the closing balance. I left them as both positive. If you don't like that, that's, sorry, you can you copy that withdrawal across to, oh, very good. Okay, and that goes down right at the end. And that's the first thing when I first had this problem. I said, oh, okay, let's try that. And then this time we can, this is what I tried. Perhaps this is where the other thing went wrong. Do you see where it says repayment down in line 75? I said, well, let's use, I left the negative there for a reason. Can you go to that repayment? So what I did is I made a second account. This is a second debt account. And in this case, I forgot what I even did. Let's make the repayment the maximum of the up there, the repayment in line 52. And that's why I needed that first debt balance way up in line 52 or 0. Okay, that's just our regular, please don't use an if statement there if you have that. And now what's happening if you go and then go down, can you go down to the, and did I not, do you see, can you click on that little button that says use reserve? And I don't think we have to do that again. Press end, or press debug. Let's just, I'm sorry. I assigned a macro to that. Sorry, can you just delete all of that stuff? Just take that out for now, including the last one, we'll show you why I did that later. Can you just close that? So if we use the reserve account, all I am doing, and I struggled with this one too, I'm sorry about that. If we use the reserve account, if that's true, can you now click it to be true in line 66? I just made a little if statement, and if you go down, and I was, of course, wrong here, can you go down to the closing balance? Just a minute. Oh, the final repayment applied. Can you go down up to line 76? Perhaps I didn't go up to line 76. I said if it's I-66 is, escape. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Can you put an equal sign in I-66? I'm sorry about this. go up to 66. Just put it line 66 up
Oh, sorry
upstairs.
about that. Yes.
Put an equal sign. Just go to that true and press F4, lock that, and copy that. Okay, so if it's true, can you see, go down? If it's true, go down to the line 76, line 76. If it's true, very good. She pressed the F2, which is our rule, always press the F2. Sorry to keep going back on this thing, but we always want to see how things are working and this. So right now, if you go forward, we change the debt schedule. We have no repayments, and then you keep going forward, and I did something else really, really badly. Could you go all the way back to the beginning for just a minute? It's okay. I hope that I made these mistakes. Right now, could you go up to line 74? Let's just do it the wrong way. Can you just put an equal sign for now? Just take that whole formula away and take that 33, which is in line in column E, and lock that, and multiply that again by that transaction period, because that's when we're issuing the debt. Okay, so that's the same debt. If you go upstairs, that's the same debt we sized upstairs with our with the regular old DSCR where we allowed things to be negative. So could you copy that one all the way across? Okay. And you probably already did it. Now, if you go forward, you'll see a problem. Okay, and this is the problem. If we didn't have these negative amounts, in, we should put a minimum function in there, and we would repay the debt early. Okay, so that's why that 39 existed. Let's leave. Should we do this? Let's do this, because we're going to have to take this away in a minute. But where it says up there, can you go down one? Can you put a minimum rather, in that repayment line? Can you put a minimum of the opening balance of that, or that other line we had, which that other maximum line says don't have a negative repayment. Now, did that work? I hope it worked. Okay, and we repaid the debt early, which is bad. It's like false advertising. The bank said the debt was going to be this long, whatever I had in there, 25 years. I made it really long, I think. And then the debt is paid off early. It's just paid off. I think if you go up a little bit higher, Eddie, then you see that debt get paid off 1 year later. Okay, not a big deal, but that could be a big deal later. So what we're going to be able to do in the future is in the future, so hopefully soon, we're going to be able to repay this. Now, could you switch the iteration button off? This is just completely, so go up to that little switch we made, the yellow switch in K1 or whatever that is, and just switch that just switches it off. Does it work? Good. Okay. So that we have no iteration button. Now, if the next thing we do is for that, if you go down now to the CFADS, down there it says CFADS and taxes, and right there it says, you see, add withdrawal from reserve account. So the idea is, if you literally take the definition of CFADS, it's cash flow available to pay debt service. And if we're withdrawing this amount of cash, I would allow that to be computed in the reserve account. And can you go up to line 110 and put an equal sign and go up and get that amount we took out of the cash reserve account? which was down a little bit. Oh, maybe I like the way you did that. And then, where was that? The withdrawal of the cash reserve, and press enter. And now I am really, really concerned. Just a minute. Can you switch off that circular key for a minute? Do you see that little switch in line 111? That
Sure.
that little true and
Yes.
false, that one. And why are we not getting a circular reference? Just 1 minute. That can you uh, I am a little bit concerned. The iteration button is off. Can you make sure in line 111 that CFADS is adding back the number, right? It's
If
it's
11.
but it's always adding back the line 110. And I was expecting a circular reference. Uh,
You want
that's
to check?
you can check the iteration button, but I'm almost sure it's not on. Very good, because we switched it off. And perhaps there's something logical here, because can you go way up to the, I know why it's not working. If you go way up to the, all the way up higher, and all the way to the that when we sized the debt, do you see where it says CFADS there in line
Yes.
42? Can you go forward and just take that CFADS? Maybe that's even and I'm sorry, the target debt service, that CFADS, what was the line number for that?
120.
So can you go see if that's the same number we were just looking at downstairs, after the taxes and after with the
No,
withdrawal?
it's 111, no?
Yeah, so can we just put it to, go up and put it to 111?
Sure.
Okay. So you just change that, yeah, very good.
Here it
Okay,
is.
so I had switched it around, and then you can see, okay, let's go down.
Shall I copy it across, Ed? That's
Yes,
what we
of
want to say.
course, of
Okay.
course. Very good. No, I didn't mean of course, but okay. And then when we go down, it's and perhaps that's why that was my problem with the other thing too, because I had made a alternative calculation of taxes. Okay, now, uh, uh, would you mind? Okay, let's switch the iteration button on. Okay, and then everything seems to be working. Maybe right now I know what I didn't do. Can you go down to the equity cash flow for a minute in line 114? That's really the dividends. We could even rename it dividends, but that's, no, let's leave it for now. That equity cash flow is the CFADS up in line 111 minus the debt service, minus the transaction fees. So that's a little bit different than project finance, because we had some transaction fees. Okay, and we have some negative whatever negative cash flow right in our transaction period. If you go to column F116, and you go down, press Control and square bracket and show everybody where that comes from. Okay, oops, Control square bracket, not F5. Control. Can you? Oh, in the French, you have a French keyboard. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's just go back to the transaction and see where it came. Go to the transaction page. So that number that was computed with our goal seek And that's the amount of equity. Now, just a minute. We have the new debt. Why is the new debt so little? Shoot, F16. Can you go up to F16? Where was that? That can you just go to that 37 in line 14? Oh, shoot. Can you see where that comes from? That's line 47. Is that?
Aquarium model S47.
Yeah, okay. I think we might have just had a really, really high,
That's the one.
that's
Sorry,
the
that's the one.
correct amount. How about this? Go down to the goal seek for just a minute. Go down a little bit. And what we had done then is we said, okay, we're pretending we're an acquirer and we're going to do a NPV of the equity cash flow, which we're just computing right now. Oh, shoot. And we get the NPV at the IRR that shoot that oh, could you put the consideration in? I'm sorry. Could you go down?
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. Could you go to J 116 and take that equity consideration, multiply it by that famous transaction period when everything occurs, and just copy that across. Very good. And just copy that now. Now we have this goal seek. We have a crazy number. Don't worry about that. Let's try to run the goal seek. Remember, we would make it by hand and then just could you try to run that goal seek button? The blue one, right? In line 124.
Mm-hmm.
And now I finally have it. I am so happy that that occurred. Okay, that's what always happens. And I'm really kind of embarrassed when I set this up with that completed case. That doesn't work. And we just have to press escape. So that iteration button always, I cannot find an example where it doesn't do that. So just in that consideration, maybe go into the transaction page for a moment. Just put in right there where you have that crazy red number, put, what is it?
Which one? This
Right,
one?
50,000, put 50,000, something like that, okay? Okay, and then you go back to the acquirer model. So that's the whole kind of business of using this, looking at this thing not only as, so if maybe what Brian told us last time, oh, put that little circular key, that's what he was trying to say, put that little circular key in. So you're only going to switch that circular key on when you want to make the final thing, but when you want to make the final thing, we're going to have a goal seek. I mean, I would think almost half of the time at the very end of a model, or not even at the end, you're going to make a goal seek, and the whole goal seek is not going to work. If I haven't demonstrated here the problem with the iteration button, I'm sorry, but I think that's what we were trying to do. So let's turn the iteration button off. So let's do that. So up here, turn the iteration button off. And then after you turn the iteration button off, let's, I think what I want to make sure in line 111, I forgot this if statement. You can see the struggle I'm hoping, and press F2. I would like to make that, I think, can you switch and make that true? Click that circular button up there, and we'll take from the paste area instead. And I'm not worried about, we still have that withdrawal. And here is the idea. Again, I never used to do it like this, but I copied people. I learned from you. I learned from kind of people who are doing this. As soon as you have that problem in line 110, what you do is you go all the way down and go to the copy and paste block. I hope I put that. We called it the solver up there. I'm sorry, it's the solver. And as soon as, if you have a little block that does that, I already put the title in there, Eddie.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
It
Sorry.
says withdrawal from the reserve account, and you put an equal sign, and you go way up and get that number from, not from the CFADS line, not from that line, but from the source up at all the way at the top. Okay,
Where was
that
that?
that was down in the second part. Keep going down a little bit. There it was, right there in the
That's the one. Yeah.
in that one. You press that one. That's where it's going to come from. You copy that across, and then you go down to the paste block. And well, before you do that, you just hit that circular reference thing, and that copies and pastes. And we have a range name for the whole thing. I hope is that
It's taking time.
no, it's not taking time because it's taking time because I didn't finish it. Escape. I'm sorry, I'm making a mistake on purpose. Not really. Press N, debugger, and then just close it. The problem was we have to then go up, and do you see where it go up to where we had the problem itself that was arising? That where it says the in line 110, take that from the paste block, put an equal sign, and instead of taking that from upstairs, you go down, and so you stick all your stuff together in a paste block, and then people can say, as soon as I have a circular reference, I can solve this really fast. I just stick it all in a copy and paste block, and then you go down and you run that whole copy and paste thing again. And we did that last time, but if you do that, come on, okay. And now, actually, Hetty and I have been working on this. I'm not sure why it's taking a little bit long. It could be because we're whatever, we're sharing the screen and all that business. This one shouldn't really take very long. And why is it not even converging? Oh, it's getting there. This is ridiculous. It's taking that long. We have got this UDF method that solves all this stuff really quickly, but I didn't think this one was a big problem. Okay, I'm kind of happy about that because we can show it to people later, but not this time because I've got enough problems. Now, if you go all the way down, okay, and I've made a little graph. And I forgot if I've shown everybody, but go down. We have the x-axis. If you go down to line 222, and then you go down, keep going forward. Okay,
You want
that's
to
our
graph
just
these?
x-axis. Could you show them the NA, our little NA
sure.
thing? And I can't remember if we've done that, but if you press F2, I didn't want to make a graph for the transaction period. And then if you go all the way forward on that line, so we just put a little if statement. If it's past the operating period right there, we don't want to make a graph there. We want to stop it there. That NA trick, I think we've done it already, is wonderful. And then the other rule about graphing is if you go to D224, you just stick your cursor right up in D224 and stop there. And that's the x-axis, you always leave the x-axis blank, and then Excel knows how to make that. And you press all the way down, click the CFADS and the debt service.
And
Nope,
DSCR too?
no, I forget the DSCR. Just click all the way. Okay, all the way. Press F11 or whatever, and you didn't have to do all the fancy stuff this time. You just do that, and the NA will fix it for you. And then you have the nice little graph. And I think did you press Control F1? And
Yes.
That's totally fine. And you can see it didn't work. So we have two problems with this method, at least two problems. Three, we needed to fix the circular reference. the DSCR doesn't work. This method didn't not work. The DSCR didn't work. And for me, that DSCR problem is bigger than the, now that's a really interesting thing you did too, Hedy. When you go on this graph and it makes kind of that sideways thing come down, can I just show you what what I would do is no, let's forget that. I can't do it with this one. I made enough mistakes, but I tried to make it a bar thing and we put the gap 0 on the bars, but we'll do that later. We'll do that later. Okay. Or no, try it. Put the bars and then right click on the bars and then go to the gap width to make it 0, and then you can see it just goes down, and I don't know what that last one was. That last one that went down was the you know, that when we cut it off because we used that minimum function. And then the really interesting thing here is and I'm just going to have to tell you the results here, but if you go back to the transaction now, and in that transaction thing, if you go up and you see that yellow line, so right now we can leave it there. Right now we have 6.88% IRR. I put the equity IRR right up at the top. But we didn't consider the fact that that we have to put our cash reserve account in. We have to get that cash, stick it on the balance sheet. So could you put and why did I put that last one in? But put an equal sign and go up and get, I don't care where we take it from, but go to that acquirer model and go upstairs and find that cash upstairs in the reserve account. Keep going up. We have the reserve account somewhere. And I would take that initial deposit. That initial deposit has to come from somebody. So you click on that. And if we have to put more equity in, and this was not as dramatic as I wanted, but we have a lower IRR. And the IRR effect is the big IRR effect is having to put that reserve account in right away. So
shall we press any button at here, circular reference?
not yet. I'm
no?
afraid
Not
to.
yet.
I'm totally afraid. Oh, do we have go to the acquirer model and maybe I don't think we have a
Iteration button false.
So if you go down, what I wanted to show you is if you go all the way down, but this model, remember, is not really correct in many ways because we have the DSCR problem, and then if you keep going down, we also have the end of the life problem. Could you go down? That's our balance sheet. I actually put together a little balance sheet up here, but right now our circular is okay.
Yeah.
But let's go up and do a goal seek and set the consideration, set how much we're going to buy this company for based on the equity IRR. That line 122 is the equity IRR, not the overall IRR. So if you run the goal seek button right now, okay, now that we don't have the iteration button on, it works, but oh, too bad for us. Now we get a circular reference problem. So then we would theoretically have to run that circular. You could even press the circular button. I don't know where that went.
Yeah, it used to be here, yeah.
Who knows? Today is not. But if you go to that master, right click on that master thing way at the top.
Sorry about
that. That's fine that you did it there. So now we're doing the circular button and then we're doing the goal seek button again. And I don't know why the circular button is taking a little bit longer, but that's okay. And now if you go, probably our goal seek didn't work. Not exactly. Go up to our goal seek. Okay, and that's the classic for me. This is where things are starting to get painful with,
Here it is.
okay,
Okay.
good. So that master, if you look at that master button, it does both, but it's all wrong anyway. Let's fix the whole thing anyway. So this just, you see, we have a tiny little bit of NPV. Remember, when you do the goal seek on when you do the goal seek on the IRRs, it's so much better to set the NPV equal to 0 and not say, let's make the IRR equal to some target IRR when you're doing the goal seek and then putting the goal seek in the macro. So let's fix this. So the biggest thing is that chart you just looked at, which had the DSCR being below 1. And the second issue was that the debt wasn't being repaid. And this is where you as modelers who are taking your time, oh my God, you're taking your time out of a Saturday and a weekend to watch this kind of stuff. Unbelievable. But then you can become really sophisticated bankers because now you have to structure the debt a lot more carefully. And some of these things can have a surprising impact on all the IRRs. And you can sound really smart, become a debt structurer or whatever you call it, and make a whole lot of money. Okay, whatever. Not like me, who stayed in modeling forever and not ever done anything. Okay, let's go, but it's been fun. Let's go up and fix all of this. Okay, we'll go way up, and this time we're going to do it a little more carefully, and we're going to use some mathematics. So there's some part of this things that I kind of like. And this time, and I had to practice this before, do you see where it says withdrawals? We need, when we withdraw the money, we need that DSCR to be what the banks wanted. So we're going to actually withdraw more than we need and pay ourselves a dividend with this withdrawal. It sounds kind of silly, and maybe you can get the bank to just have a 0 DSCR or some other structure, but that's what I'm doing. But this time, do it a little more carefully, and we might have another circular reference here. Put an equal sign and don't take that one, put an equal sign. It says go down and take the interest expense from below, not above. If you go below to our final restructured amount, keep going down, keep going down, keep going down. That interest expense, notice how that's the same. That's the same until we hit until we start repaying the debt. And it should be the same unless the interest rate changed, which wouldn't affect this at all. But we have to cover more than the interest rate. Our debt service, our DSCR has to cover it has to be 20% above the interest. So multiply that one by the 1.2. And if you tried, some other kind of goal seeks and everything else, I think you'd be kind of struck. That's how much we need. But we get some EBITDA to get there. So you go down to the next one and put an equal sign and go up and get that. And let's get that from upstairs, the EBITDA up there.
Where do we have? Is it CFADS?
Way up there. No. The CFADS includes up, just pure EBITDA, that one. And that EBITDA, that's the whole problem. If you copy that across, just so everybody can see what's going on, that the amount we need to cover is, and that's why our repayment was negative. Our EBITDA doesn't cover our interest, basically. And now we said, no, it has to cover our interest plus a little the interest rate. And now let's go down and get the taxes. And I think we should get the taxes from some kind of, we got to be really careful, but make sure we get the taxes from the paste. Why don't we go all the way down to the paste? You could also probably get them from the taxes that we put in this. No, I changed my mind. Escape. Let's get the taxes from our CFADS calculation downstairs. Okay, so go up. There's a CFADS calculation. Okay. And
is it in financials?
There we go.
Here
Let's get it from the paste block there. I don't know if you'd You tell me, Hetty, when you're taking something from the paste block, I don't know if there's a rule to color it differently. Remember, we had a net operating loss and we used the minimum and maximum, so the taxes aren't affecting anything till much later if you go forward. And so that now we have our required withdrawal is, and that's what I tried to show you with the mathematics over there. Our required withdrawal is that's how much we need if we just have the interest minus the EBITDA plus the taxes. Very good, because we need to cover the minus of the taxes. But then it's going to get all horrible again. We don't worry about that negative thing. We're only going to do it when it's positive. How about this? I think I did it a little bit differently, but just why don't you put a maximum, and remember, for everybody else, here's my rule. If you take something and see if it's positive or negative, that's all you want to do. You take the maximum. If you are testing to see if you have enough money, which is most of the stuff in a cash flow waterfall, NOL, anything else, it's the minimum. So this time she just put a maximum of that or zero. And that's what you do. Never if and all that stuff. No if statements, hardly ever except with the true false. So now that's a higher number. And if we put that higher number in, and then that initial deposit, I don't know how it came to be 65,000, but go down to line 69 down there and put an equal sign in, I'm sorry, in column E, put in column E, put that amount. So again, that's a style thing, but
Sorry, Ed, what was that amount?
that's the amount we want. We need to sum all of that withdrawal stuff. So it's the same as the total in line 62. Wait, so go back to yeah, put an equal sign and take that one. It's up in G 62, down, down,
60,
down, down,
sorry, yes.
down, up
62.
that one. Okay. I hope that's okay. Did I do that wrong? Okay. And then our withdrawal amount is, if you go down, our withdrawal of our reserve account, put an equal sign and go down to put that as the net required withdrawal. Okay. And I hope this is going to be okay. I'm afraid now. Okay. So that's how much I hope that we have it okay. I'm a little bit afraid, but for everybody, you can see that this gets a little more complicated. And why don't we cheat? If you go to chart 1, that shows us our cash flow, or go down to that beautiful graph you made. Okay. And it's still, just a minute, it's still not okay. It's still not okay. We have a negative. We still don't have our DSCR being our target of 1.2 yet. And I think the reason we don't is if you look at our circular button, we have a circular button. And the reason we have a circular button is, remember, this time, press that circular button. And now, oh, please, please, please.
Yes.
It's, oh, I know it's looking funny. Let's not worry about that. But at least we're getting the DSCR right. Okay, so that's yeah, kind of that's the first step. And again, and I think we have to fix our minimum thing, and we have to fix the debt size now. But I hope you can see that using a little math is necessary before you dive into these problems. And I tend to make this error all the time. I dive into these problems and say, oh, let's just fix it. Let's just start adding rows in Excel. Let's just start messing around. If you can kind of think through the problem at first, that's what I think would make it interesting. Now, what happened with this one? Using that 111, put an equal sign, go up to the repayment flag, and then multiply that repayment flag up in line 41. No, how about
Sorry, yes.
that one, and multiply that and go down to the CFADS without the withdrawal, because we always have to start with, keep going all the way down to our CFADS. And perhaps there's a more elegant place to put the CFADS, but remember and don't use that one, go down a little further and take the CFADS without the withdrawal. So we kind of have to have, yes, we had to have one with the CFADS with the withdrawal, one without it. And that's why that whole iteration button when I started was a mess, because press enter. And let's see if that works, okay? And then, so now if you look at that part one, we still have those big negative repayments, which was the source of all the problem. And then we go down and we figure that interest is our new interest that's just flat, which is all kind of a little bit messy. And then we have a amount we have to take out of the withdrawal. And now let's fix one more thing. If you go down to that debt service, the thing in line 76, if you go down to line 76 and go back to the repayment applied, no, I'm sorry, go up one, that's the repayment we were using. I don't want to use that minimum anymore. Can you just put an equal sign? And we just want to take, do you see where it says a negative repayment flag? Just a minute. Let's, if you just would, how about click on it? Let's use an if statement. If it's no, no, yeah, maybe I totally contradicted myself about this. If it's the negative repayment flag up there, put 0. Or if it otherwise, put the one we had up in line 50. Line 52, because then do that, at least press enter. Okay, that we might have to do a little bit more, copy across. Okay, now what I'm hoping for is that when we do that repayment and we start this repayment, we have a negative number, and I don't care anymore about that negative number. And what I would do is, let's do something which is kind of the old-fashioned way that I would say. This is how I used to do sculpting before I used to use the CFADS divided by the DSCR, take the NPV of that, blah, 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 blah. We could also do a goal seek and just find out and figure out how much debt we have to put in order to get a balance at the very end of the repayment period. Okay, now remember, if we don't have this negative problem, you don't have to do that whole goal seek business at the end. Some people still do that, but I haven't done that for almost 15, 20 years right now. So could you go and let's do the old kind of way to do that? I'm afraid even to tell you this, because I'm afraid somebody's going to start using a goal seek and computing the debt size with a goal seek instead of our elegant little formula, but we're going to do it anyway. So go up to line 65, and we're going to make a little true and a false switch. But this time, put an equal sign and go up to the counter, which is in line 11, and make an equal sign and click on then that 25 years over on the side and lock that. So we're only having one true. And let's leave this as true. We could use that Shift Control B thing but let's not for once.
Okay.
Okay, if you go forward, we'll just have one true. The reason I'm showing people this one is to show how you can use the sum product with a true. Okay, so if you go down, do you see where it says the final debt size? And now you can see why I was having these problems. If you go down to F74, where it says the debt issued, okay, now up 74.
74, sorry.
So that's a fixed number.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use the goal seek to get that to see what we have. That's going to be, and you notice that I even named that as a named range. Can you go to the end of the debt? Now we that which is, I'm sorry, in line 82 in F82, F82. And this time use sum product. And on the sum product, let's take the closing balance of the debt in that very last year. So go and select that whole thing. And then if you put a comma, it doesn't work, but try a comma.
Okay.
Go forward to that true, like that. Maybe it'll work now. Press enter.
Yeah, it
Does
should
it?
be it should
But
be
if you
0.
put a multiplication instead of a comma, God knows why. I have no idea why it works like that. If you would have put a 1 or a 0, it would have been just fine, by the way. So that maybe that was the lesson. And you notice I named that. So let's make sure everybody does this. The famous most important macro of all, let's just make it. So let's set the final debt size in line, go up to, I'm sorry, go up to line, I'm sorry, go up to line 75, our debt issued. And I tried to do this with a little up there, up one. I tried to do this and can you go, let's just do it by hand. Go forward and this time go to column J and make that equal to that final debt size, which we're going to get from the goal seek. It might even work now. Put an equal sign there and just take that number and multiply that by the transaction period again when everything is where everything is occurring. Okay, and then copy that across. Okay, so we do have a little bit of a difference. And then let's do a goal seek. Let's do it by hand. So let's, before we even do the goal seek, go to the developer and record a macro.
Okay.
That's just, so often, and how about we make this goal seek debt something. I have too many goal seeks there.
Yeah.
And press OK. And then you just make that difference, the closing balance of the debt equal to 0. And whenever you use a goal seek, I think 9 out of 10 times I would want it to be 0 and then change that final debt size. So this time, hopefully, we'll get everything right. And if you didn't, all I can say is this is a pain. And maybe there's some really wonderful, elegant way to do this without doing it this way. I'm sure there's probably a better way. And is that working? Is the goal seek not working?
It's calculating, Ed.
Uh-oh,
I don't know. Do I have any
uh,
circular reference here?
yeah, okay, it's going slowly.
It's
Press
slow.
OK.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay, and then stop record the macro. Everybody knows that, just like you stop recording on your phone. Okay, and then the next step after we stop recording the macro, we go to the macros. So click on that macros little thing up there, and then put this workbook, and then find that goal seek, whatever we called it. See how many goal seeks I have now, and just press edit. And you've got to make sure you take all that stuff out at the beginning. Notice that they had even it recorded when we moved it up and down. And I think we set the, can you go back? I have no idea.
Me
End
too.
of debt. So that end of debt, it has an underscore in it. Wait, let's show everybody what we did. Hey, just on that end of debt, select that one and the next one together. Shift right.
This one, right?
No, down in line 82. I'm just showing you how we made the range name. Select that one and the next one, and then press Shift Control F3. And sometimes I don't think it's bad. Then you see what the range name is right in the program instead of having to guess. And then it just says, well, make the range name from the right column and you press OK. And what it does is if you have a little space, it just puts an underscore. So just press OK. up there, and then go to that final size and do the same thing. You click on the final size, and I don't know, there's something in this model right now that's taking way too long. You don't have anything else open, I think, even, Hattie, right?
I have a generic macro
No,
in this.
that's not,
Yeah,
I
that's
promise
not
that
it.
doesn't.
I know.
So shift down and press shift control F3 again. So it's essential when you do this goal seek to do that and press OK. And then now go back to the goal seek
Yes.
go back to the goal seek and change the F82. That was end of debt. Okay.
It has an off, Ed? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
end of debt. And then the
Yeah,
other
but
one was final debt. Okay, so
it was
that's
that size, right? Final size.
final size. Okay.
Yes, I
Phew,
copied that one.
I can't remember. And my mind is just going, okay. Very good. So now if you can just run that from here or somewhere else.
Okay, you know, what I'm doing now is a little bit crazy. I'm going to the completed, the totally complete version because we had a little problem. And what I'm going to do to kind of finish this up and try to really explain things is first make sure I've got my. Now, it's kind of silly, but you can tell, even if it's that wonderful class with people online, I can't tell you. For me, I get very nervous when I make all of these mistakes. All right, and somewhere we had put this show comment thing in. Okay, and if you copy this, and what I'm going to do now to kind of finish this off, and this is so ridiculous, all these little buttons. I've never had this many buttons, and it's totally overdone. And in the real world, you wouldn't really turn things on and off in this page. You wouldn't have an option to not do a copy and paste. Maybe you'd use a reserve button, and maybe this one. And I'm going to now just go down and review what we've done. So the first thing is, and I'm going to press Shift F2 for a little thing now. Somebody dropped coffee on my machine, my computer. By this cheap little old computer, and so it's crappy. I don't even have my name in it. So let's make the first step is these variables are transferred from the, I'll just call it the main model, and set according to the transaction date. So maybe this is really a bad idea. Okay, I won't make a long thing because obviously I can't type. All right, and then I'll make it even longer and even longer. Okay, and so now, of course, if we show the comment, we can kind of see what's going on. And then we compute this I'll call the ungeared or unlevered IRR. Doesn't mean all that much, but it means a little bit even in this context. And you could argue, should you put fees in or not? But this is how much you've spent. And then this gets the EBITDA. Now this EBITDA, you remember, if you remember, we had all these scenarios where we had unimproved O&M, longer life. We can see, okay, what if we had an improved performance ratio somehow? And it's taking a little bit too long, and this gave me a little bit of a higher IRR. So we can do all of those sorts of things. Notice that I put the circular reference difference up here, but this doesn't depend on the circular reference. Now, I was vaguely thinking that if we issue new debt, we could leave the old debt in here and have kind of two debt issues. So if you assume the old debt and don't assume the new debt, you could, whatever, get all the data. Okay, so maybe I'll put another Shift F2 and we have the I'll just put over here, we have the option to retain the existing debt. Okay, and if we had two debt issues, that's another subject. Again, we can show the comment. Come on. Oh, I did that one up here. Okay. All right. Okay, that's enough of the kind of starting. So we're not going to assume the new debt. I suppose this is kind of interesting. If we don't have anything, consideration, and we're paying it all with equity, this equity IRR got really low, probably because we have some circular reference junk still in there. I'm clicking our famous circular reference button, and by this time I'm saying let's not use the iteration button, and I still get a really low IRR. Okay. But let's put the new debt in, and then the debt CFADS without, this is CFADS without, and this is target debt service without reserve in CFADS. I think I have to make a kind of long, so we put a little X here for this. That means that's related to this, and then we put the currency. And this, of course, is the CFADS, but that doesn't have the reserve account. And then the whole idea of this, okay, the whole idea, again, I hope this is okay. The whole idea, oh, come on, what a waste of time. This was a silly idea. I'm not going to do this anymore. Was to find the interest expense above the debt. And we also use this, let's just leave that for now. We also use this because we could pretend that this was payment in kind interest. If this was payment in kind interest, then this interest expense up here, this would have been I've got to get this right. This would have been the total interest expense we booked. I suppose we could have I'd call it a portion of this interest cash interest, which would have been the difference between this number and that number, and the remainder would have been this amount, which would be the required payment in kind. So we could have also put required PIK interest. And let me, now I've worked with so many wonderful people over the years in some real estate kind of things. We had to put all this payment in kind interest and split it between what's the cash interest and the payment in kind. Okay, and then we stop. Now, and I'm gonna make this. Let's make this a little more clear. Let's make this, and let's call this the final without PIK, payment in kind, or negative repayment, which is really capitalized interest. Not capitalized interest, just capitalization. And let's call this part, And I hope I've got range names everywhere, so there's absolutely no issue with inserting a line. Let's call this one part 2. And we'll call this the compute the required, oh God, a reserve. Oh, you must be so irritated with me right now. And a withdrawal to produce the DSCR. Okay, that was the whole idea. And we use this formula. We begin with the interest. This one we almost don't need, by the way. This is the key formula right here. We have the net with required withdrawal, which is the interest expense from below. And this withdrawal, I need to put interest from below, not above. Okay, and then we get the EBITDA. If we have some taxes, we take those taxes away, and then we get the required withdrawal. Now, right now, it's got a negative number. When you see these negative numbers, the first thing to do is click on the circular reference to make sure, something bad didn't happen, and it didn't. And then once we have this required withdrawal, the next part is I should have perhaps just a minute. This was the okay. I think, excuse me for this, but I think we could I think perhaps we should move this up here. Okay. And again, I put the wrong thing here. Okay, so, and where in the hell this iteration button went now is really irritating me. But, so here's our closing balance. It goes down to 0, and we have the withdrawal. Now, if we cheat for just a minute, we'll see that this has this nice DSCR. It has a kind of ending balance that looks all reasonable, and it's all finished. And that's the thing that didn't work in the way I set up the class. The required debt service after the reserve, and perhaps I should have shown you, perhaps I should have first presented, and why don't I do that? This says take the CF-ADS divided by the so I'm going to put CF-ADS. Notice I can't complete a sentence, which is really irritating because I listen to other people who talk in short phrases after withdrawal. And I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. So all I'm going to do is go and get this whole thing. This is what caused this massive circular reference, is that we did this and we did this twice and all that, okay? And then I better, just to make really sure that I don't screw up anything, I'm going to multiply this by our basic debt repayment flag, if I still have that. That's way up here. So we're starting to have a really long debt schedule, and now maybe the best thing to do is just simply take this divided by that. And I hope that I didn't kind of screw up. And we stop this not at the end of the life, we stop it at the end of the debt term. Okay, the arrogance of me to imagine that we could have incorporated in this session a refinancing discussion is remarkable. Okay, now this time I said, oh, well, let's, we had this closing balance at the end, and it went down to 0, and we wanted to make sure it happened. Well, the debt service, the interest expense, you see, stayed the same, and then finally we start repaying it. We start repaying the debt, so it goes down. So the debt service is just the interest expense. And we can see that somehow, if this is the interest expense, we need to somehow get the CFADS up to this level. And to get the CFADS up to this level, and I don't mind that I'm repeating this a little bit, we have to stick in some kind of withdrawal from a reserve account. And this was how we started the whole thing. I hope that's a little clearer now. Okay. Now, when I got down, and this one, instead of doing it the way we just did it in the class, I said, it's always the case that the debt size is the debt service, which again is initially only the interest, and we divide that by our little interest rate index. I could have multiplied it by the PV, but this is our little PV factor, okay? And the reason to do that is if the interest rate ever changes, the NPV formula and also the 1 divided by the interest, the discount rate won't work either. Okay, so hopefully it's coming a little bit together now. And this debt schedule is totally different than this debt schedule that we started with. This was only there so we had these numbers. And perhaps you could have just computed these numbers in a little bigger formula or something. But I need to get this number, you need the interest expense. And to get this interest down here, you needed the debt balance. So I don't see how right now how to do it, at least in a clear, transparent way without doing something like this. All right, so we get the debt size from the debt service, and then I make this debt size up here. Well, I can't make it equal to this one because we'd have a circular reference. So instead, I press Control square bracket, and I find, well, I stuck another in, God, I can't complete a sentence. In the copy and paste block, we took this one from the PV of the debt service. That's down here. And then, and if anybody's watching this still, I just can't believe it. I really can't believe it, unless you're really trying to get some sleep or something like that. I have to sometimes watch videos to get to sleep, but not this one's. And then, so we just paste it here, and then that pasted number is kind of like the goal seek. So that's basically an alternative to the goal seek. And again, I learned so much from doing this with the kind of group thing. So you can use the copy and paste as an alternative to the goal seek. And I see a lot of people do that sort of thing. Okay, and now I see, that's how you do it. Okay, so we have everything. Now the repayment, I had to be very careful with. I said, well, if it's true, I wasn't that careful. Final repayment here was if it's the whatever, the withdrawal period, put 0. And then otherwise, take the amount, this amount up here of the debt service after the reserve account and subtract it. Now, once you get this debt service, and then I put this debt service down here, that should be the same debt service down here, and then I split it up with the repayment, and I also put the closing balance, which could have included the existing debt. And then we go down and we compute our taxes. And when we get down to our taxes, taxes, if I press Alt MD, I can see where this tax goes. I guess this tax went up here. Oh, I see. And this tax also, Alt MD. I think that's a wonderful little shortcut. And it went to the copy block. So I think what I should have done here is when I say taxes over here, I should have maybe put 2 copy block. And I think there should be some sort of coloring on this perhaps. And I'm not going to sit here and waste my time on this right now. So if we have, this is this whole business of either doing it with the iteration button. And when I did it with the iteration button, of course, just to review, if I take the circular key out and I put no copy and paste, and we get all these circular references. I put the iteration button on, and I'm afraid to do this. I'm going to save the file. And then if I just put a little, I'm redoing it again. If I put a little A here, no copy and paste, iteration on, I would have expected a lot worse situation here. And then, look at that. And I press Control Z. Shoot! I really shouldn't have done that, should I? So I'm going to take this away. Maybe we can get it back. I'm going to copy this one back. If we got really, look, we could get it back. Phew. Then I have to redo this calculation. Okay? Enough. I suppose really a big part of this exercise was to show you why people use copy and paste. And later, if you've got a big model, I'll show you how to do the UDF with something like this, okay? Which is not that easy, but it's like an IRR. You make a big investment. It's like a big CapEx, and the returns are, I think, really big too. Okay, that was a little bit off the subject, wasn't it? Okay, if these are blue, they come from the transaction page, and then we can, let's of course switch this off because that's not going to work, and use our copy and paste, and now we've got this. And if we wanted to, let's say, figure out what our consideration was, we'd have to run this one, which has both the circular and the goal-seek. It's painful. It's painful, and it's a hard problem. And can you imagine if you had multiple debt issues or more complicated taxes, including shareholder debt? If you had a long construction period and IDC, just what a pain all of this kind of stuff would be. But the point is here, it works. And I am not even sure kind of what was wrong with when we finished the exercise, but it works. Now, if you wanted to try this again, I'm afraid to do this because I'll show you all my other emails maybe. This is our weekend sessions. Remember what we do here. I'm going to put this video up here, of course. You go up here, this first one, and then after you go to the first one, I'm going to put a little blue button with both the exercise file, and if you are really brave, I should give you a prize, but I can't afford it right now. Should give you a T-shirt or something. Eddie had this T-shirt said the ecstasy is when the balance sheet balances. So why don't we go there? Okay, and this kind of I put the profit and loss, and this time, because these fees are not to be capitalized anymore, at least God knows which accounting you use. So I think nobody allows these to be capitalized. They've got to be expensed. So in this transaction period, we have a little bit of loss. And then my suggestion is to put kind of EBITDA taxes, and now I put withdrawal of reserve account. You could kind of argue that this withdrawal, and look at this, we have a tiny little stuff going on, and that's probably because when I did this goal seek, I wanted to, but this should have been, that's enough. I don't quite understand why I'm getting any little thing here. And whoops, I can't even redo it right now. This withdrawal from the reserve, I put as a cash flow item so you can show the CFADS. Okay. And then you're basically, after you've paid the enterprise value, and I said we also need to pay fees, and we also have to put this horrible 10 million out of the 40 million in a equity reserve, and this is basically like a sources and uses of funds. We issue some new debt, and then we have to issue more equity because of this, because the debt depends on the CFADS. And then we pay our interest, and then we pay dividends right out of this. So we withdraw this money from the reserve, and part of it goes to dividends. But that has to happen, unfortunately. So you get this buffer for the banks, and that's a very expensive thing to do. I would hope that maybe you could negotiate something more interesting with the banks when you have this sort of a problem, especially if you just have a solar bouncing up and down. Why you should have to put this big reserve on your balance sheet? Why can't you just put a little payment in kind interest for the one period and then pay it off in the next? Okay, that's the kind of thing we should be able to resolve. And then the cash balance, that comes from way upstairs. I think some of these things, and I'm not consistent. The assets, I said, well, let's just take our whatever, our enterprise value. That's the fair value. I didn't put any goodwill in here because if you have a single asset, I don't see how you could, when this asset dies, the goodwill will have to be gone away. And basically, you almost have to record from an accounting basis the surplus value, I think, as if you're buying an individual asset like this, as an increase in the fair market value or write-off or something. So we don't have any goodwill. I left a space, and so our assets are this. And then we have the debt, and again, the debt comes from that second, this time, well, this closing balance, I use the closing balance of the debt and the closing balance of the existing debt in case we left some existing debt on there. And with all those stupid little things with the goal seeks, it doesn't exactly match, but I said, okay, let's just make sure this difference between the assets and the liabilities is less than one. And so that's the final thing. Now, we could have also put a stock price in just to finish this whole thing up. So when we do our little sources and uses, we could have said, the share price was 20, so that means if we're issuing this much more equity, that's equivalent to issuing this much more shares. And then you could have looked at this transaction and said, what's the accretion or dilution effect? And I think that would have been one of the silliest things ever in the world to do, because the return on invested capital is always negative, and the earnings per share are always going to be really bad at the beginning. And in fact, we got negative earnings here, and then we got whopping really big earnings here. So doing some kind of accretion and dilution, I kind of F11 here. I can show you what happens, but that's a meaningless kind of number in buying a single asset that depreciates over time, and you have a big upfront capex too. So I am sorry about the way this thing worked, but not completely sorry. And I've got to put these files on the internet, and today it looks like it's the 22nd, and it's 09, and this was a complicated problem, and I don't see how to make this one. And I've tried to think about it. A lot of these things you can make a little more simple. This one, I couldn't see how to really make it more simple. So I'm going to finish the video now, finally.